Welcome to Government Technology Insider's very first video podcast interview. I'm your host, Matt Langen. In the government arena, many agencies are moving their mission-critical applications to Oracle Cloud, which is the most secure, scalable, FedRAMP certified cloud available. And there are a number of customer success stories about agencies migrating their e-business suite and JD Edwards applications to the Oracle Cloud. And today we're speaking with John Ezell, EVP and co-founder of Bias, and John's joined by Mark Saltzman, Senior Director of Database Services at Bias. And Bias is a leading Oracle Platinum partner and IT services company with dedicated solutions experts all around the world. And both John and Mark will be discussing these successes, along with techniques for migrating large volumes of data and valuable lessons learned from some of the largest and most complex ERP migrations to Oracle Cloud. And John and Mark, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no,
that was a great intro, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I rehearsed that one a few times.
Yeah, you're smooth, man. I like it.
Well, I appreciate that, John. That's very kind. I think the Starbucks coffee certainly helps me get into character, much like yourself there.
Yes, we owe it all to Mr. Schultz.
Yes, Absolutely. We do. All right, well, let's kick it off at the top and tell us about the opportunities that your customers are seeing when it comes to moving to the cloud versus staying on-prem, and really what problems that were solved in this migration or during these moves.
Matt, thank you for the opportunity. And, Mark and I were just discussing this before we started. We've got some very large customers. One that kind of came to mind is a housing authority in one of our nation's largest cities. It's kind of we hear the same story over and over again where they want to get out of the data center business. It's not key to their mission. They didn't start by, their mission statement is to provide housing and opportunity for citizens, right? Not to manage a data center. So with all that, a data center, I think, was right downtown, Mark?
Downtown.
Yeah, downtown. So rents were just exorbitant and had grown over the years. They'd been in this data center probably 20 years. And you can imagine in a major metro city how that rents just kept going and going and going. And then you don't have the maturity of the latest data centers because it's downtown and, all those different things. And
well, they had power issues as well. So
yeah.
They had some of the equipment was not even on generator power.
Oh my gosh.
So it was definitely problematic.
Yeah, and another thing was, there's all kinds of weather events and that kind of thing. This city actually was hit by a major storm, almost like a hurricane, just a few years back, and they came really close to losing their connectivity. So, moving to the Oracle Cloud, they were able to have that disaster recovery, and they were able to be in a world-class data center. They were able to increase the performance of all their applications, just because they're on the latest and greatest hardware, they're on the latest and greatest network, they're actually more secure than they were before.
Yeah, well, John, also, we got them away from a cold DR restore. We got them to a hot, basically a hot backup. Hot DR as well, so we can immediately fail them over from one OCI data center to another, to where before they had like a 24-hour RTO.
Right.
And then on top of that, performance-wise in OCI, we put them on Nexus CS, and we put their e-business suite on Nexus CS with quite a bit of performance
which is the Exadata Cloud Service. So for folks that don't know, Oracle has an engineered system that basically was built for Oracle workloads. So this is massive server with storage and network and database, all in one box. And Oracle offers that in the cloud. And that's the highest performance system that you can run Oracle workloads on.
Yeah, same as on-prem, but in the cloud. So
right.
It's one of the advantages of going to Oracle Cloud. And it's FedRAMP approved as well.
Yep.
And GovCloud approved too.
Yeah, that's a great rundown there. And you covered off on this in many ways, but I'll ask it. Tell us a little bit more about what really entices your customers to make this move. You certainly talked about a lot of the benefits. Is there anything else to add to that, kind of what motivates the customer?
I think, Mark, I don't know if you would agree with this, but you know, a lot of our customers want to get out of the data center business, as we talked about before. But we don't know one customer that doesn't want to save some money, right? They're always saying, "Hey, we'd love to save some money. You know, what's in it for the business? How do we recoup our cost?" So one of the things that we do, Matt, is we help. And a lot of times we're dealing with the IT department of, you know, the shared services IT model, and we're helping them to provide that business justification back to, you know, the folks that own those mission critical applications. So that's some of the things that we're doing to help them, you know, kind of realize what those ancillary benefits are going to be once they move into the cloud.
Yeah, a lot of times that tech refresh comes into play as well. It's a lot more inexpensive to look at migrating to OCI than do a tech refresh, and it's an ideal time to really do a TCO and an analysis to move over to the cloud. And you can start implementing a lot of the newer features, as well as encryption and auditing features.
That's true.
And the licensing is built into the subscription model in the cloud, so where you don't have to buy new licenses on-prem as well.
I'm glad you brought up the compliance thing, Mark. So Matt, a lot of our customers, all of our customers are audited. You know, these systems, you know, government customers, you know, that's public trust, that's federal level, some very, very important data. And then you've got personal data of users across pretty much every system that we run in, right? Those compliance audits aren't going to stop. You know, the auditors are still going to come in. You're still going to be held accountable for how you're managing that data. And one of the things that trips up a lot of these large organizations is encrypting of the data and securing of that data. Once you move to Oracle Cloud, it's encrypted. Anything in the Oracle Cloud is encrypted, right? And what we see in the large organizations is everyone has that mandate, but there's an internal struggle between who owns the data. Is it the CISO? Is it the info security team? Or is it the database team? And a lot of times when they have a mandate to get that data encrypted, they don't get there because of internal politics or internal feuds or who owns the data and who's responsible for the data. Moving to the cloud also, another ancillary benefit, it kind of gets you out of those fiefdoms and where everyone's fighting over sovereignty of the data and that kind of thing. Once you get it to OCI, it's encrypted. And when the auditors come in, you can check the box that, yes, we've done that. And we've got a full audit trail of everything that's happened with that data.
That's great. It sounds like you have all the processes in place to really help customers migrate and especially get that kind of internal business support to make the decision to make the move. But what are some of the other objections that customers encounter internally, and how did you all respond to help them overcome these issues?
I would say probably number one, Mark, is why should I do anything?
Right. It works fine as it is. Well, a big one is, you know, I'm going to lose my job. You have to overcome that one.
True.
You know, so, you know, we spent a lot of time on saying it's basically, it's a paradigm shift. There's always a job here. You just need to kind of re-educate yourself.
Right.
But, you know, when you're dealing kind of down at you know, kind of at the delivery level, we get a lot of pushback there. But once we kind of overcome that, it's a pretty clear sale.
You know, and Matt, just to kind of unpack that a little bit, you know, change is hard. People don't like to change. This is something new. It's not necessarily new. It's been around for a long time. It's proven, but people just don't like to change. So one of the things that we do to kind of show these organizations why it's better to move is, you know, what we talked about before is the business value assessment and business value work that we do, and then taking these applications that they're been running on, and they may be running on in an older data center, or they're worried about. We can take that and do a POC in the cloud and prove it to them, right? And it doesn't have to be, we don't have to truck in a new server. We don't have to, take all that time. We can literally spin up workloads in a matter of days in the cloud and prove it out to that application owner that says, why should I care? I don't really care what's on the back end. I've got my app, you're responsible for the back end. We can prove it out really quick on why that application is going to be more performant.
Well, that ability to scale, also is a selling point that helps us overcome the objections as well. Because you can basically say during a peak period of time, we can help you scale up. You don't have to buy licenses for that. You pay for what you use, and you can scale back down.
Great point, Mark. And so, Matt, traditionally, when you buy software and hardware, you buy for the worst case scenario, right? And with the cloud too, like what we've seen in the largest federal and state and local agencies, they're like, why am I buying up here for the worst possible scenario? And we go in and run these consumption reports, and they're at 35%, and they only peak up here maybe at certain times of the year, maybe at minimum like a handful of days a year if they ever get close. And now with the cloud, it allows them to ramp up and use that and then shut it off when you come back down to normal.
I would say, John, say 3-4 years ago, we were knocking on doors trying to talk to people about cloud. They weren't listening. Now they're knocking on our doors, really trying to talk to us about cloud and finding the bandwidth. So I would say it's been a little bit of an uphill battle, but I would say now it's more common to talk about cloud, and the adoption there's much higher adoption today than there was several years ago. There's less resistance.
Yeah, and just one more thing, Matt, I'd like to talk about how's my job going to change, right? Because I think that's important to touch on. We touched on it before, but 80% of our customers' time, when we're talking to those guys that are in charge of the infrastructure, the guys in charge of the database, all that, they're doing daily maintenance. 80% of their time is just keeping the ship afloat, right? They're not doing anything strategic. And they would probably like to do more strategic things. Go work with the business, go define those data sets, go help that application run faster, better, and cheaper, and help your constituents get the most out of the systems that they're paying for. When you can free up some of your time, it allows these folks to exercise their creativity. Some of the smartest folks in the country are running these systems, but most of their time is spent doing break fix and keeping it all wired together. Right.
Yeah, great. And let's say you get to the point, you get customer buy-in, they want to move forward, thumbs up, all systems go. What are the next steps in terms of your methodology, in terms of getting them on OCI, and what's the process for that, and how long does it typically take?
Well, so normally the first step would be we need to architect out the solution, build out the network, and then work with the networking teams, the infrastructure team to design it. I mean, OCI in general is built where the entire network is closed off, and then you have to open up the ports base security-wise. And then Bias has built out the Bias digital platform. So once we lay it out, basically we load it into the system, and by pressing a button, for lack of a better word, we can go ahead and deploy out the configuration, the virtual compute networks, and we can spin up the VMs and deploy out the XCS or the Exadata or whatever it is, the infrastructure as a service, and then stand up that infrastructure, the bare metal infrastructure, and then we can start looking at deploying the migrating the database and then migrating the middle tier, and then we have a methodology for that as well. Primarily we have a large-scale migration factory for the database layer, that we've used effectively on-prem and kind of repurposed for the cloud. And then we also have an effective PMO organization that interfaces with the customer to lay everything out and do change requests and then sequence the migrations along with the application team and the business owners.
And so, like, duration wise, Mark, how much time does that typically save versus an on-prem discussion, on-prem situation?
Well, so it really it saves quite a bit of time, but it's all dependent on the timing from the customer. What is their change request format? If the customer is in a hurry we have a customer that has to be out of their data center by August, right? And they're very aggressive, they're very motivated,
yes,
and that means the entire data center, dev, test, production, basically middle tier database, networking, routers, the whole thing. And so primarily within 3 weeks we had the infrastructure set up and we were already doing pilot migrations. So that's on one example. But then on the other example, we could spend 4 weeks, 5 weeks just working on a project plan. So it really all depends on how motivated the customer is, and really how many layers of bureaucracy you need to delve through.
Right. But which is always the case.
Right. But what I always thought, what I liked about our system is it's very adaptable. Right.
That's great. We're getting kind of to the tail end of this, and before we sign off, are there any parting shots, any last lessons learned or insights or anything you want to share with an organization that's considering moving to the cloud?
I think, Matt, one of the things that we've, and I think Mark touched on it really well before, is if you're considering moving to the cloud, or if if it's come up, get started early and get that executive buy-in any way you can. If we can help you with that, we'd be happy to do that. Bring in the vendors, whomever you want to bring in, have them go in and present, that value case. Make sure that you're, one of the things that we learned, and you can see this on some of the videos we have out on our YouTube channel, making sure that network is ready, making sure you do your due diligence in the architecture design of the system, and then take that back, and we can use that, doing your homework. We can help you with the homework, and then we can help you present that to the decision makers, so you can make it as streamlined as possible.
Well, what I like to say, parting shot was interesting, but what I like to say is if you have an Oracle workload, the Oracle Cloud is ideally suited for you. If you're looking for high availability, if you're looking for redundancy, if you're used to rack, Oracle OCI is built for that. It's a Gen 2 environment. Oracle looked out at the cloud infrastructure and at the cloud providers that are out there and said, hey, what would you do differently? Well, what should we do differently that's been done already? And it's a brand new environment. It's built to scale. It's basically a flat network. It's really quite a phenomenal infrastructure that's out there, and really it offers things that, say, the competitors don't. Right? You can build a rack environment out there. You can use enterprise licensing. There's this new autonomous database that's been around. That's really quite fascinating. It has AI built into it, automatic patching. So there's there's new features there that really are keyed up for the 21st century and beyond.
Machine learning algorithms that are now included for free in the Oracle database that are going to be available in the Oracle Cloud. Just some really cool features, Matt, that really are differentiators when you're talking about, moving that Oracle workload over to Azure or moving it over to Google or whatever. Those are all great platforms. And what we're talking about here is this OCI can work in a hybrid cloud scenario. we don't have one customer that's all on one platform. We got customers that, everybody's got a flavor of AWS. They've got, Workday. They've got, ServiceNow for help tickets. They got all these different things. But, having those mission critical workloads in Oracle and then being able to talk and integrate with all those different clouds in a world-class certified environment, there's no one else that can compete with it. Not from what we've seen.
Not at all.
That's perfect. That's a great way to take this out. And for all of our viewers, this is a wrap of Government Technology Insider's very first video podcast interview. And as you heard, we spoke with John Ezel, EVP and co-founder of Bias. And John was also joined by Mark Saltzman, Senior Director, Database Services at Bias. And both John and Mark were kind enough to share their insights and go pretty deep on the value of migrating to the Oracle Cloud for government. And John and Mark, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Our pleasure.
Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.